So today we're excited to share confidently nourishing children. What's the deal with dairy? When dairy foods have played a central role in dietary guidelines, healthy eating patterns for people 2 years and above, the 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee report released just this last July includes dairy foods in its inaugural recommendations for expectant moms and children 6 to 24 months. As health professionals, we know those first 1,000 days are a critical window of time to support optimal health and set foundation for healthy eating patterns to help people thrive across the lifespan. And while nearly all parents agree healthy eating habits during childhood have lifelong impact on their child's health, only 1/3 are confident that they're doing a good job shaping their child's eating habits, citing cost, convenience, and food preferences as key challenges. So today, we're going to address some of the top questions parents and guardians receive when it comes to dairy foods in their children's diets, so you, as health and wellness professionals, can help them confidently nourish their children. And I'm honored to be joined today by Dr. Winston Price and registered dietitian Holly Granger. Dr. Price is a board-certified pediatrician and past president of the National Medical Association. He also serves as Chief Information Officer for the Cobb Institute, a health disparities think tank, and he was recently appointed to serve on the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health Council's Steering Committee. He holds academic positions at the Philadelphia College of Medicine as an assistant professor in the departments of pediatrics and director of pipeline programs for the Southwest Georgia campus. In addition, he's assistant professor of pediatrics at the Medical College of Georgia. Dr. Price also practices clinical medicine with a focus on preventative care. Now, many of you may be familiar with Holly Granger. She's a nationally recognized nutrition and lifestyle expert who brings healthy fun, flavored with creativity, ease, and sheer enjoyment of all things food, family, and beyond through her blog, Cleverful Living. Holly regularly shares her expertise through writing, speaking, and media appearances for a variety of national outlets, including Martha Bakes, the NBC Today Show, The Doctors, Parents.com, and many more. Holly was also the food and nutrition editor at Oxmoor House, Southern Living, and CookingLight.com, and MyRecipes.com. She serves as an NDC National Dairy Council ambassador and is proud mom of 2 girls. To start off with, as we jump into the webinar today, we know a lot of parents are curious about why exactly dairy is so important for children. So Dr. Price is going to dive into this for us, and Holly's going to share some great tips to recommend to those you work with, or maybe you could even use in your own home. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Price.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you to the National Dairy Council for giving Holly and I an opportunity to share this important information with our audience. Early childhood is a critical period for establishing taste preferences and healthy dietary patterns, which are important in supporting optimal growth and development and in preventing diet-related chronic disease. Dietary habits established early in life track into childhood and adolescence and influence diet quality during adulthood. I'm going to spend the next few moments sharing how early introduction of dairy foods can help build healthy eating patterns to support growth and development now and help to prevent chronic diseases later in life. An expert panel convened by Healthy Eating Research, a national program of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, noted that the first 2 years of life in particular represent a crucial window to learn to like healthy foods and develop habits to help prevent chronic diseases. While breast milk or formula for those who can't breast milk alone should be the primary source of nutrition at least until the first birthday, the recent Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee scientific report acknowledged at 6 months the introduction of complementary foods and beverages is recommended to ensure adequate nutrition, introduce varied flavors, varied textures, and different types of foods. And by 7 to 8 months of age, the American Academy of Pediatric recommendations the introduction of a wide variety of foods from all the food groups. So let's take a closer look at the dairy foods as complementary foods once baby is developmentally ready around 6 months of age. Then one can introduce yogurt and cheese. And these are important complementary foods that offer unique flavors and textures for older infants. And they complement the other food groups. For example, plain or unsweetened yogurt alone or with added soft fruits and or vegetables represents a nutritionally sound approach for providing a sour taste experience to older infants. Cheese presents a variety of textures ranging from soft and solid in the case of cheddar cheese to lumpy in the case of cottage cheese. By 12 months, these digestive systems are mature enough to tolerate cow's milk protein in larger quantities, and you can introduce whole cow's milk. So we're going to next move on to talk about some of the aspects of this period of accelerated growth. The period from conception through the first 3 years of life is an explosive rate of linear growth, tissue development, and brain expansion. In fact, by 12 months of age, a newborn's brain doubles in size, and by 36 months, it triples to almost adult size. To fuel this rapid growth, the infant brain alone uses over 50% of the consumed daily calories. I might add that also infants double their birth weight, usually between 4 and 6 months of age, and triple their birth weight by a year of age. So you can see that this is an important period of time for development. Babies should receive most of this fat from breast milk or formula in the first year of life. However, as the baby is weaned to whole milk, they should be introduced to provide concentrated source of calories and nutrients to fuel brain development and growth spurts. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 4 to 5 servings a day. The serving is defined as a half cup of whole milk or yogurt and 1/2 ounce of cheese. And this will be updated in the subsequent dietary guidelines that are going to come out. So the National Dairy Council with the American Academy of Pediatrics co-created this useful guide for health professionals, parents, and caregivers alike on how to introduce foods and beverages in children under 24 months of age. This resource illustrates dairy's important role in healthy eating patterns and recommends introduction of yogurt and cheese as complementary foods at 6 months of age, and the introduction of whole milk starting at the first birthday. A link to this guide is included in your reminder email, and it can be found at usdairy.com. But I'd like to turn it over to Holly to share some tips for introducing dairy foods to infants and toddlers. Holly?
Thank you so much, Dr. Price. Also interesting, especially as a mom of 2 little girls who are 6 and 9, to learn even more about this and think, gosh, I wish I could have put some of this into use. But as you'll see from the video that we're about to watch, I have some tips on how to begin introducing these foods to your children or to your clients, and how to help them and where to start. So let me play this fun video. We have some different interactive surprises throughout today's webinar, so I hope you will enjoy. And I do see questions coming in, so please continue if you do have questions as we're presenting to leave them in the comments, and we will answer these at the end. So let's get this started.
As a new parent, trying to figure out what to feed your baby can be so stressful and confusing. I remember with our girls, I was always confused as to whether or not I was feeding the right food in the right quantities at the right time, which just make my head spin. Thankfully, you can feel good introducing whole-fat plain yogurt and cheese to your little one as early as 6 months if you and your pediatrician feel that your child's ready. While real dairy milk shouldn't be given until at least 12 months, plain yogurt and cheese are a nutritious complement to mother's milk or iron-fortified formula. Cheese and yogurt offer unique sensory experiences and can have an important role in the development of healthy future eating habits. Yogurt provides a creamy and sour experience, while cheese offers a variety of flavors and textures. By 8 to 12 months, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the National Dairy Council recommend 1 serving of dairy each day. So this would be a half a cup of plain yogurt or a half an ounce of cheese. Serve cheese in bite-sized pieces and yogurt with one of those cute little spoons. And just remember that making a mess is all part of the learning process. So encourage your child to smell and feel and explore their food. I still do this with my girls, and they're 6 and 9. Now, by the age of 12 months, try introducing whole milk in a cup. It's recommended that children this age have 4 to 5 servings of dairy. So this is the equivalent of half a cup of milk, half a cup of yogurt, or a half an ounce of cheese. You can serve these foods individually, but also try incorporating them into a variety of recipes that are so simple. For example, add milk to oatmeal. Prepare yogurt and make it into popsicles. Add cheese to steamed vegetables, or whip up a simple smoothie with milk, yogurt, and fruit. It's important to remember that every child's unique. So don't worry if your little one eats a little bit more or a little bit less than the recommendations. Just keep in mind that these are serving sizes and really serve to act as a guideline to help get you started. Good luck.
And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Price to share with us some more information. Let's see, let's get this up correct here, about dairy's unique nutrient package.
Thank you. So overall, dairy foods like milk, yogurt, and cheese provide a cost-effective, nutrient-rich source of essential nutrients. In fact, it is the #1 food source of 3 of the 4 under-consumed nutrients of public health concern, identified by the Dairy Guidelines for Americans. Those are calcium, vitamin D, potassium, and magnesium. And in fact, not only is milk a good and excellent source of 9 essential nutrients, it is the leading food source of 9 essential nutrients across the span, including protein, calcium, vitamin D, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, vitamin A, vitamin B12, vitamin D, and riboflavin, which is also vitamin B2, for American children ages 2 to 18 years of age. So because of this unique nutrient profile, dairy foods, such as milk, cheese, and yogurt, are foundational foods included in multiple eating patterns. These include the Healthy Eating Patterns in the 2015 Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which will be updated shortly, the Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, the DASH eating plan, the eating patterns recommended by the American Heart Association, the guidelines of the National Osteoporosis Foundation, and the newest one, which is to release the pressure, which is a campaign that is a unique campaign by a number of organizations to reduce hypertension in the Black community, particularly among women. So due to these nutrient contribution and a review of the evidence that notes dairy consumption is linked to lower risk of cardiovascular disease, a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, and improved bone health, especially in children and adolescents, it is important to ensure we are building healthy habits to form a strong foundation as we age. But bone health is an especially important topic for children and their caregivers. I realize that this slide is a little busy, but let me try to unpack it for the audience. It is important to ensure we are building healthy habits to create a strong foundation as we age. And bone health is important both for active and inactive children because it sets a tone for the development of strong bones as we approach early adult life and certainly as we age. In its clinical report on optimizing bone health in children and adolescents, the American Academy of Pediatrics acknowledges that bone mass is influenced by dietary patterns in childhood and adolescence and influence the time to onset of osteoporosis. After infancy, peak bone mineral accretion rates occur on an average at 12 to 12.5 years for girls and 14 years for boys. And by 18 years, approximately 90% of the peak bone mass has already been accrued. Childhood and adolescence, therefore, are critical periods for skeletal mineralization. And so we need to work on that all the time. It's important to focus on bone-building habits like healthy eating and physical activity during this time. Obviously, during COVID, that becomes quite difficult. And so in addition to calcium and vitamin D, dairy foods providing a host of other bone beneficial nutrients, as illustrated in this graphic, from a recent review of the dairy intake and bone health across the lifespan, in fact, dairy foods provide more bone beneficial nutrients per calorie than any other food group. So reiterating milk's important role in nourishing children, it comes from a number of sources of trusted science leaders in the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association, and under the leadership of Healthy Eating Research supported by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, we recently saw in their consensus guidelines noting that milk and water as the go-to beverages for children 2 to 5 years of age. Milk because of its nutrient-rich package, and water because of its hydration. It is clear that the cost can be an obstacle to healthy eating, particularly in these difficult times that we're facing with COVID-19 and the fiscal downturn. The reality is dollar for dollar, dairy foods are one of the most economical sources of nutrition. In fact, a serving of milk costs on average just 20 cents per serving, meaning you could get 3 servings of this nutrient-rich dairy for less than $1. According to the 2015 to 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans, there are 10 shortfall nutrients that many Americans do not get enough of in their diets. 4 of these nutrients, calcium, vitamin D, potassium, and fiber, have been identified as nutrients of public health concern. Because of their underconsumption, they have been also linked to adverse health outcomes. This analysis of National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or the NHANES survey for 2011 to 2014, compared the cost of obtaining nutrients of public health concern from the various food groups to help identify cost-effective ways for Americans to move closer to healthy and sustainable eating habits. In fact, milk and dairy products were the least expensive source of calcium and vitamin D, and the 3rd least expensive source of potassium in children's diets. Replacing milk or dairy with other foods results in higher costs to get the same nutrients. So despite the known benefits of dairy, children are falling short of dairy recommendations at an alarming early rate. By 4 years of age, children of all ethnicities are falling behind recommendations, and this gap only grows as they enter school and become more independent. The largest consumption gaps are among non-Hispanic Black children, Asian children, Mexican, and Hispanic Latino children. Holly, why don't you take it from here?
All right, thank you, Dr. Price. All right, so you just heard from Dr. Price that many children are not meeting their daily dairy recommendations. So let's focus on some of the obstacles that families may run into when it comes to meeting those dairy recommendations. Now, as health professionals, I think it's important that we understand what is driving this gap between what's recommended and what is actually consumed. So, for example, and these numbers hit pretty hard, in 2018, 1 in 7 children were food insecure. Now, in the wake of the pandemic, that in this year has risen to 1 in 4. That's very significant. And you can see from these percentages that communities of color are those that are being impacted the most, with nearly 38% of Black households and 36% of Hispanic households reporting food insecurity. Now, as health professionals, it's important that we do what we can to screen again and again for food insecurity and not just assume if someone, maybe we saw them a year ago and they were okay. It's important that we don't assume that they're still fine now, because so much has changed in the last few years. So continuing to ask questions to help screen, such as what does your child drink at meals? What kind of milk, cheese, and yogurt do you buy? As well as role modeling, asking the parents or the caregivers, what dairy foods do you enjoy? All of these are ways that we can easily help to screen and pay attention to find out if there are children or families that are dealing with food insecurity. And this then is our opportunity to provide some tips on how they can incorporate dairy into those meals, especially at lunch and at snacks. So let me show you just a minute. Right now, I paired up with my little girl, Ellie, and we want to show you a couple of ways that you can include dairy, and you can encourage the people that you see to include more dairy in their lunch and snacks. There's just a few practical ways. So we're going to get in the kitchen together, and I'll show you.
Children's dairy consumption tends to decline during the time when they need it most. Did you know bone mass, including peak bone mass, is what is influenced by what your kids eat during their childhood and adolescence, and it can impact their bone health for the rest of their life? Here's how to make sure a decline in their dairy consumption doesn't happen. Whether your child's attending school in person or virtually, it's easy to add a serving or 2 of dairy to lunch and snacks. So here are a few fun examples of how we like to add dairy to our day. First up is dip. Now, my kids love dip, and studies have found that serving a favorite dip alongside veggies encourages them to eat those vegetables. So try making a dip with Greek yogurt or even cottage cheese. It's a great place to start. Pair carrot sticks, broccoli trees, celery smiles, cucumber half moons with a simple yogurt-based ranch dip. It's a great way to be able to have a plant with dairy. Now, skewered foods are all the rage at lunch these days. Thread cheese cubes, sliced turkey, cherry tomatoes, and bread on a small skewer to make a sandwich on a stick. Pair these in the lunchbox with other favorite foods and they're all set. Just don't forget to include milk with lunch. Now, it's okay to play with your food. We love to drink smoothies, but decorating a smoothie bowl is tons of fun. So gather around the blender to add your favorite smoothie ingredients like milk, yogurt, and berries, then give it a whirl, pour it into a bowl, and decorate. I hope you enjoy these simple and fun ways to add more dairy to your lunch and snacks. Enjoy.
Thank you. Gosh, Holly, that looks so tasty. I need to have your daughter come by to prepare some food for the holidays for me.
She would love it. She's a good helper in the kitchen. And my other daughter she said, I think everyone's going to wonder where I am in this video. Can you tell them that I was the camera girl? So, okay, yes, I will tell them you're the camera operator. But yeah, they're good helpers in the kitchen for sure. That certainly is one easy way to help them actually eat, is having them help prepare what they're making. So that always is a good tip. So, yes, I'm going to turn it over to you now, Dr. Price.
Okay. So another common area that we get questions on is asthma, allergies, and lactose intolerance. So let's first talk about allergies and asthma. The fact that food allergies and asthma can be interrelated adds to the confusion. This is what we know. The presence of food allergy is a risk factor for developing asthma, including life-threatening asthma. About 8.4% of children in the U.S. develop asthma. People with underlying asthma may experience more severe allergic food reactions. And those with documented food protein allergy related to milk should be co-managed with an allergist regarding required milk restrictions. However, there is no link of any food with asthma symptoms or severity and management of asthma that does not include the necessary use of dietary restrictions on milk. However, milk allergy and milk intolerance require a different lens. Many people use the terms interchangeably, but health professionals, we know there is a difference in management and the underlying mechanism between allergies and intolerance. So let's try to unpack that. When it comes to milk allergies, the reaction is a life-threatening reaction to the protein found in milk casein. Our body's immune system recognizes the protein as foreign, and therefore it causes an attack, which could include anaphylaxis or, in the worst case, death. Lactose-free or low-lactose foods are not a solution for milk allergy. Complete avoidance of all dairy products, including minute amounts, is recommended for true milk allergy. Now, although about 2.5% of children under the age of 3 years of age are allergic to milk, the good news is that most children, about 80%, will eventually outgrow this allergy by the time they are 16, unlike with other allergies. However, one of the newer areas that we're exploring and learning more about is related to peanuts. And the newest guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics is that early introduction of peanuts, even as young as 4 to 5 months of age, actually reduces the risk of the development of peanut allergy. Go figure. Proper diagnosis with an allergist or pediatrician is required. Children with milk allergy or 2 or more food allergies were more likely to consume below the adequate levels of calcium for their age and gender. So nutritional counseling by a registered dietitian is recommended if food allergies are diagnosed. In addition, protein intake was lower in children with milk allergy, and therefore height for age percentiles were also lower in children with milk allergy. Now, as you know, lactose is a 2-chain sugar found in milk and dairy products, and human milk as well. It is made up of glucose and galactose. And when we have an intolerance, there is an unknown amount of lactose that we can digest due to the lactase enzyme activity. It is very individualized and dose-respondent depending on the amount of lactose and the source. It is very uncommon in children given that human milk contains more lactose than in cow's milk per cup. So, Holly, why don't you continue there and talk about some of the ways we can get lactose into the diet.
Absolutely. I'm going to play that video, and then we will chat some more on the other side.
Did you know that you don't have to give up your favorite dairy foods just because of lactose intolerance? In fact, there are many delicious low lactose and lactose-free options available. While lactose intolerance typically isn't a condition that young children experience, if it does happen, it should be taken seriously so you can ensure they get the nutrition they need for growth and development. There are some solutions that can help, and here are some of my favorites. First, surprise, it's milk. Lactose-free milk, to be exact. Best of all, it's 100% real cow's milk, just without the lactose. So people, whether kids or adults with lactose intolerance, can still enjoy milk in their cereal, in their smoothie, and of course by the glass without discomfort. Second, hard-aged cheeses like cheddar, Swiss, Parmesan and Colby Jack may still be enjoyed because they naturally contain a minimal amount of lactose. Thank goodness your kiddos can still enjoy their favorite cheese with crackers, sandwich skewers, and of course, Parmesan on their spaghetti. Did you know that regular and Greek-style yogurts are also options for people with lactose intolerance because they contain live and active cultures that help to digest lactose? In fact, Greek and Icelandic-style yogurts have even less lactose because they're strained for so long. This means that nothing is standing in between your child and this delicious yogurt and fruit parfait. These solutions mean that a child with lactose intolerance can still get the numerous benefits of dairy's nutrition, which is so important for their growth and development. I hope that you've found a couple of delicious solutions for you and your family as well. Enjoy.
So let's take a look at some of the different foods that were mentioned in the video and see kind of where they fall, because there are options with real dairy that people that are lactose intolerant can still tolerate. So I love this chart. I think it's a really helpful tool or resource that parents can understand and can look at the varying amounts of lactose that would be found in different dairy foods. Now, it's important to know and help people that you might be working with understand that each person with a lactose intolerance may tolerate it at varying degrees, and that really is because one size doesn't fit all. It's important to understand how much lactose is in the food that that person might be eating, how much they can handle at one time, and looking to see if maybe they tolerate it better when they are eating it with other types of foods. And, as a reminder, there are many of these foods that, while they are lower in lactose, the sugar that remains is sucrose and galactose. So here are a couple of tips, and these are ones just reiterating what was shown in the video, that you can help parents understand both for themselves or if their child does have a lactose intolerance, that they don't have to give up their favorite dairy foods, and they still can have foods that taste great and have those health benefits. So these are a couple of ways that people can enjoy foods that, if they are lactose intolerant, that they can kind of test it out and see what works for them. Like I mentioned in the video, lactose-free milk. It's a great way to keep dairy food in your life. It's real dairy, and you get the same 9 essential nutrients that are found in regular milk: calcium, protein, vitamin D, potassium, the ones. And that milk is lactose-free, regular milk just without the lactose. And of course, these other products like we're talking about, whether that's a hard-aged cheese or yogurt, regular Greek-style yogurt or Icelandic-style yogurt, they all have different benefits and work different in different people's bodies. So it really is with people that you might be seeing, whether an adult or a child, that it does take a little bit of testing to see what works best for each person. And I think these resources are very helpful because often if someone receives a diagnosis that they are not allergic, but that they're intolerant, definitely different if they're intolerant, that they then understand they don't have to give up dairy. They can still enjoy it. They might have to just get a little bit creative. So one other thing that, in addition to dairy foods for people with lactose intolerance, that we are often questioned about is, what about plant-based alternatives, and how does that compare? Where does that fall in regard to real dairy milk? So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Price to talk about that.
Thank you, Holly. Whenever you're going to talk about alternatives to regular milk and you talk about lactose-free options, parents are going to bring up the issue of a dairy-free or plant-based alternative. And one of the issues with regard to that is it is not the same as dairy cow's milk. Expert panel on healthy beverage consumption for early childhood also looked at this and concluded that the plant-based dairy alternatives aren't recommended as a complete substitute for dairy milk for young children for a couple of reasons. One is that the nutrient content of these milks varies, and we really shouldn't be calling them milks. We should be calling them beverages or plant-based alternatives. The other reason is that the nutrients may not be as bioavailable from these plant-based alternatives to cow's milk. That means that although the children may be consuming an equal amount, the amount of nutrition getting through the linings of the stomach and the intestines may not be equivalent. And with the exception of fortified soy milk, these milks are not adequate nutritional substitute for dairy milk, which has many nutrients essential for healthy growth and development. Some plant-based non-dairy milks have added nutrients such as calcium and vitamin D, but the amounts vary by type and brand. And evidence suggests that our bodies may not absorb these nutrients from these plant-based milks as well as it can from dairy milk. The report acknowledges that plant-based alternatives are not recommended, but when there is an allergy, a true allergy, not just a maldigestion or intolerance, they may be on a case-by-case basis something that they should discuss with their healthcare provider. And certainly unsweetened and fortified plant-based beverages may be an option in those situations, but the overall diet should have enough key nutrients that are found in milk. So, and just a few months ago, about August 2020, another pediatric medical association issued a position paper on plant-based beverages, which also cautions against these plant-based alternatives, calling out dairy milk's important nutritional package, the protein quality, and the risks associated with plant-based beverages on child growth and development, which can be largely preventable. They call on consumer education to clarify that plant-based alternatives do not represent an equivalent source of dairy nutrients. What type of milk should you feed your child? Holly, what do you think?
Oh, well, as a mom, I know it can be very confusing to walk down the dairy aisle and see all of the different options. So let's take a look. Now, these flashcards that you see here can be found on usdairy.com, and I think there's such a good tool, especially when it comes to comparing the different nutrients. So since many parents are asking what type of milk to feed their child, as a healthcare professional, it really can be helpful for us to know and be able to compare how all the nutrients stack up. And I'm not just talking about protein for protein or calcium for calcium, but all of the nutrients and the unique nutrients that you can find in cow's milk that might not and is not available in dairy alternatives to the same level. And unfortunately, compared to cow's milk, this level of research that has gone into researching the benefits of dairy milk has not been conducted on many of these plant-based drink alternatives. And of course, as RDs, we're the ones that are always looking for the science. And these comparison cards, I feel like, are very helpful in being able to compare and contrast and look at all of the different nutrients as a whole. So like I said, you can find these on usdairy.com. They really give you that at-a-glance comparison. And if you're looking for resources to help people better understand the nutritional trade-offs, these are definitely what you need. They cover cow's milk and then compare dairy alternatives like soy, rice, almond, coconut, cashew. And I have found, just especially when people say, you know, we'll question something or say that maybe I've decided to give my child this beverage instead of real milk, it really gives you ground in the science for being able to say why milk is important, especially for children's health and growth and bone development. And when it comes to dairy, not only is there real milk, but there's so many different things you can find. And really, at the end of the day, the biggest, most important takeaway is that the best milk is the kind that you and your family will drink. So whether that's conventional, it's organic, it's grass-fed, it's A2 beta-casein, regardless of the type of milk, it's important to know that it's nutrient-rich, it's safe, and it's wholesome. And no matter what kind you buy, you're getting the nutrients that you need, that your children need, that your body needs. Another question that I often receive, and I've actually seen some questions popping through in the Q&A, looks and is talking about sugar. Now, when it comes to flavored milk, it's important to look at the full nutrient package, like I was just talking about, that you get. And I love to look at the fact that flavored milk contains the same nutrients that are needed for growth and development as plain milk, and it only contributes 4% of the added sugar in the diets of children from 2 to 18 years old. Now, my little girl Frances, who's 6, last year came home from school and was all upset because she loves drinking chocolate milk, and that's her choice of beverage at school. And she was all upset that one of her fellow classmates had told her that she shouldn't be drinking chocolate milk, that it's bad for her. This is kindergarten, you guys. There's so much misinformation out there. And I told her chocolate milk is not bad for you. And in fact, I went on to explain why milk makes her bones strong. And putting that into a child's head at such a young age, just, you know, the good and the bad, we could get on a whole nother webinar about that. We won't go there. But I do want to point out that if you look at these percentages, sugar-sweetened beverages contribute 36% of the added sugar in a child's diet, 2 to 18 years old, while flavored milk gives just 4%, but also gives that huge package of non-essential vitamins and minerals, a healthy source of protein. And yogurt, I know there was a question earlier about flavored yogurt. Yogurt only contributes 2%. So if you look at all of the foods that a child might be eating in a day, if they are able to get milk, and the only way they will take milk or yogurt is by having the sweetened, pre-sweetened kind, understanding that it's such a small percentage of the whole daily added sugar contribution really does help put that into perspective. And of course, there are other ways, mashing berries and stirring that into plain yogurt. You know, there are other ways that you can sweeten yogurt and you can sweeten milk. But if you are purchasing the kind that's pre-sweetened, it's good to know that. And in fact, what I was not aware of until just recently is that the sugar levels in chocolate milk have declined. So by over 9 grams per serving. Originally, they were around 16, 17 grams, and now they're about 7 grams per serving. So just knowing that if it's chocolate milk or it's strawberry milk or if it's vanilla milk that your child may be drinking at lunch, or that a child comes into you in a clinical setting and says that they're drinking, before pausing or saying, you know, oh no, sugar, it's important to remember all those other nutrients that they're getting. And at the end of the day, that's just a very small amount of their added sugar intake for the entire day. Now, of course, we were talking about our kindergartners, but I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Price to talk about our older kids and some of the questions that, as parents, I'm often asked, and I'm sure he is as well in his practice.
Thank you, Holly. And that's an important thing with the flavored milk. I mean, the amount of discarded non-flavored milk that gets thrown into the garbage from the kids who are forced to take the container milk rather than a flavored milk doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If they're going to drink all of the chocolate milk, they're going to get less in the way of extra sugar than if they don't drink any milk at all and wind up after school getting a can of soda from the parents. So that's very important information that you shared. So we get them through their childhood, we get them to the teenage years, and besides all of the other issues that parents need to address with teenagers, when children get older, there are common questions about puberty and acne begin to arise. And of course, the confusion as to whether there are effects from the dairy intake causing the acne and the early puberty. But early puberty is most likely impacted by BMI and body fat and not by dairy intake. And we know that improper eating and not getting the proper nutrients are more likely to cause children to be overweight and obese. In fact, about 30% of our childhood population are overweight and obese. And so getting the proper nutrients that are in dairy, and the fact that we realize that certain chronic diseases are reduced in their likelihood because of dairy intake, we need to work at getting the adolescents and teens to do that. Speculation in the early 90s that hormones in milk might be a cause of early puberty in children has led to misconceptions about milk that current science does not support. I say again that current science does not support, and we need to follow the science. In fact, there are no conclusive evidence that drinking milk or eating other dairy foods or any particular food is associated with early puberty. The scientific community has investigated the link between higher rates of childhood obesity and pubertal development in females, but more research is certainly needed. Several observational studies link higher mass body index or increased body fatness with early initiation or progression of pubertal development. As we discussed before, milk provides important nutrients for children's growth and development, such as calcium and vitamin D, especially as they reach their peak bone-building years in adolescence. And obviously, the children who are feeling less pain and discomfort from not having enough calcium and vitamin D are less likely to be actively engaged in physical activity, especially sitting around those computers and mini screens as they try to deal with this pandemic. So it is not surprising that myths about acne are common, given that 85% of people between the age of 12 and 24 report some acne occurrences. And the fact is that the body of research to date does not show a cause and effect that diet or any particular food causes acne. We know that poor nutrition and eating fast foods and drinking a lot of soda certainly can add to the poor reparative components in the body that's going to produce better normal skin as the acne clears up. But there's been no association between a particular food and acne. The American Academy of Dermatology did look at diet and acne and stated that there has been no randomized controlled trials between the role of dairy consumption and acne. There has been some observational studies, but they do not demonstrate a cause and effect, and this is important. Further, according to the American Academy of Dermatology, a balanced, nutrient-rich eating plan can help keep skin healthy. And dairy foods like low-fat and fat-free milk, cheese, and yogurt are an important part of the healthy eating plan, providing the unique package of the 9 essential nutrients that we talked about earlier today. So removing dairy foods, or any food group for that matter, from your eating plan can actually have a negative impact on nutrient consumption. So rather than focusing on removing specific foods to promote healthy skin, concentrate on the healthy, balanced eating plan that contains all the food groups, including dairy foods. If you are concerned about acne, you should consult a dermatologist for appropriate treatment, but remember, it can be co-managed with your healthcare provider, and you should still enjoy dairy. So,
thanks so much, Dr. Price.
You're quite welcome.
This is Sally. While we were talking about nourishing children, I just wanted to pop in because we know that many moms that are asking questions about how to best feed their children are probably either expecting another child or considering expanding their family. And what we mentioned earlier, the 2020-2025 Dietary Guidelines for Americans, the recent scientific committee report really took a life course approach and for the first time took a look at the first 1,000 days of life. And while we know that iron and folic acid and choline are important nutrients during pregnancy, dairy foods, especially milk, provide an affordable and accessible package of important nutrients for mom, like protein, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin A, and B vitamins. But I also want to spend a moment on some nutrients that don't always come to top of mind. So vitamin B12 has been found to really provide some important attributes for prenatal health, as noted by the Academy of Pediatrics Nutrition Handbook. And the good news is milk, cheese, and yogurt are all good or excellent sources of vitamin B12. And then there's iodine, and iodine might be a nutrient that a lot of us don't give that much consideration to. In the past, it really had been kind of focused on that iodization of salt had served as a solution for iodine deficiency. But the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee noted that iodine is a potential nutrient of public health concern for pregnant women as needs increase by more than 50% during pregnancy. And prenatal iodine deficiency might lead to irreversible neurocognitive defects and lower IQ in children. And the good news, again, is that milk and yogurt are good sources of iodine. So I'm just going to toss it over to Holly for a minute to give us a little bit more information on that.
All right, so I have one more video, and I am going to share with you more about iodine, especially because that was when I was pregnant and trying to become pregnant, a nutrient that I was not paying as much attention to. So I feel like folic acid has certainly been a buzzword for years, and I feel like we will be hearing more and more about the important role of iodine. So for those of you listening, this is a really great time to jump on and be ahead of the curve and being able to share why these nutrients are so important. So let's get this video started.
Whether you're pregnant or trying to become pregnant, ensuring your body gets proper nutrition is very important. Fortunately, including dairy in your diet will help fill nutrient gaps and provide your body and rapidly growing baby with important nutrients like calcium, vitamin D, high-quality protein, phosphorus, and iodine. Iodine may be a nutrient that you aren't as familiar with, but it's important to pay attention to, and here is why. Did you know that the iodine needs of a pregnant woman increases by 50%? In fact, iodine is a potential nutrient of public health concern for pregnant women because prenatal iodine deficiency may lead to irreversible neurocognitive defects and lower childhood IQ, according to the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee report. That is why it's so important that expecting moms get enough iodine. The good news is that milk and yogurt are both good sources of iodine. When I was pregnant with my girls, I loved to include milk and yogurt in smoothies or other recipes to help boost my dairy consumption. One recipe that I loved to make when I was pregnant was my super green smoothie. It's so easy to make this recipe because many of the ingredients you likely already have on hand. Let me show you how to make it. To make the smoothie, add 1 cup of milk, and I'm just using low-fat milk for this recipe, and 1 cup of your favorite greens like spinach or kale. Then add 1/2 cup of yogurt. I'm using plain Greek yogurt, but you can certainly use flavor like vanilla if you like. Then add a kiwi, frozen blueberries, and a frozen banana. Then give this all a whirl. And just like that, the smoothie is done. This recipe makes for a really easy breakfast on the go or an afternoon snack. And I love the fact that not only does it have milk and yogurt, but that it also includes some fruit and vegetables. All really important sources of nutrition for those moms to be. I hope you enjoy this recipe. It's practical, doable, and absolutely delicious. Cheers.
That was awesome, Holly. Thanks so much. And as we take this home, as we're wrapping up the webinar, I think this next section really addresses a few of the questions that popped up in the chat about dairy's impact on the environment and ecology. And so we do know that that's an important topic for kids and parents these days. And certainly kids are interested in finding out more about sustainable foods. And as you can see here, while 82% were interested in sustainability before COVID, COVID really just brought that home and increased their desire to know more by 44%. So what parents and children alike might be surprised to know is that U.S. dairy contributes just 2% of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. And thanks to increasingly modern and innovative farming practices, the environmental impact of producing a gallon of milk has shrunk significantly from 2007 to 2017. And we're going to pop in and take a look at a quick video to learn more about dairy's environmental sustainability commitment and how we're going to get there. Great. Now, I'm cognizant that we're short on time, so these back-end slides are in the handout you received. So I'm going to pop through those super quick so we can really take some questions. But I did want to point out to those of you that are dietetic students or internship directors or know of someone interested in getting more experience in sustainable nutrition, NDC is accepting applications for their internship program through February 15th, and you'll receive a link to that in your follow-up email. So with that, I would just want to thank everyone for participating today. Wish you a happy Hanukkah and hope you have a safe and peaceful holiday season. And we can pop in for a few questions here if we have time. So let me get to the question list. For Dr. Price, how do you determine when infants under the age of 6 months have a true milk allergy or milk protein intolerance?
Right. So the true milk allergy is going to require the intervention with an allergist or a GI specialist. It is a complex combination of getting biopsies of the intestinal mucosa, as well as collecting stool and measuring the amount of protein and fats that are being discharged in the bowel movement and not digested. Some of the blood tests that can be done are not as reliable, but we certainly do some tests where we measure the amount of acid production or hydrogen production for the infants. But it requires an allergist or GI specialist to do some refined tests. And it is not that common, fortunately.
Fantastic. Holly, I think some of your smoothie videos were a hit. There's questions on any ideas for milk besides smoothies?
Oh, definitely. Even just this morning, I made pancake muffins for my girls, and instead of using water, I used milk as a way to add more nutrition and pop a little protein into those. But milk can be used in casseroles, it can be used in sauces, it can be used just in so many different ways. It can even be used to thin out things like a dip. You can use it in creamy soups. So yes, there's so many recipes, and on U.S. Dairy, on the website, on my personal website, there you can search by milk and find dozens of recipes besides just for drinking milk out of a glass or in a smoothie on ways that you can use it.
That's awesome. And I also did want to mention, although everyone's received the slides as a handout. Holly's videos weren't included in those because they were a special surprise for you today. We wanted to do the grand release during the webinar, but she's going to post those to her social media, so keep an eye out for those. I think they're really super tips to show people how they can make smart choices at home and get their kids and family involved in really building those healthy habits at an early age. So I know we're a little bit over time. I so appreciate everyone's participation in this webinar today. And just so you know, we do see the questions that were coming in through the chat. And so we'll look at addressing those through the content that we post on usdairy.com as well. So please check that out. There's a whole host of resources, and we look forward to engaging with you in future webinars next year in 2021. Thanks so much.